Hello there, and welcome to my workshop. Today we're going to be doing something much different than what I've been talking about before in this vlog. Today we're going to be making our own Boba Fett inspired armor set that you can make for yourself at home. Now, even though I've got this nice piece of machinery behind me that I can print it out very easily, I'm not going to be using it for this build. The idea for this series is that I'm going to be using things that you can find at your local craft store, and that's a lot more reasonably priced and a lot more accessible to other people. With that said, though, we're going to be needing a couple things before you can get started making it. But first and foremost, you're going to need templates for the armor. There's a website out there for the Mandalorian Mercs Costume Club, and they have a bunch of the templates for both the Jango Fett and Boba Fett armor sets, for the complete set, helmet, wrist gauntlets, everything. That's what I used. You can print it out on 8.5 by 11 printer paper, and it cuts out real nice. The next you're going to need is some EVA crafting foam. They come in many different thicknesses. The one I used for the build that I made is actually going to be 5mm thick. Now you'll notice I don't have the armor out in front of me yet. I've already got it done, but I didn't exactly paint it like Boba Fett's. And we'll get to what color scheme I used here at the end. Next you're going to need some silver Sharpies and some sewing safety pins just to get the template transferred onto the foam. Then you'll need a box cutter, a heat gun or hair dryer if you don't have one, some crafting epoxy or craft glue, some brushes, some spray primer, and some spray paint. Well, the first step of this whole process, like I said, is to print out your templates, cut them out, and then you're going to use those sewing needles to hold the template in place on the craft foam while you use your Sharpie to trace it out. I couldn't find my Sharpie, that's why I'm using an orange marker instead in this video. And once you've got the templates traced out, you're going to use your box cutter, or you can even use an X-Acto knife if you want to cut the templates out. Make sure you're cutting on the inside of the Sharpie mark, because that's where the trace met the paper, and that's where it's going to be most accurate to the template. The next step is going to be using your heat gun to heat up the foam in order to form it to the shape you want it to be. I didn't have a heat gun or a hair dryer, so I just used a portable heater that I had laying around in my garage. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to heat the foam up till it's just barely too hot to touch, and then bend it over a rounded surface. Most people use a foam anvil or just a metal ladle. I just used my leg because it was sturdy enough. And the idea here is you're going to want to overbend the foam just a little bit so that when it kind of softens out and unbends a little bit, it still makes the form you want. If you let it cool and it starts to get too flat, you can always reheat it and form it again. The next thing to do is seal the foam. And what this process is useful for is that when you go to prime and paint the foam, if you don't seal it, it's going to kind of soak in that paint and get a nice spongy texture, which isn't really something we want when we're trying to imitate a metal armor. So on the shoulders, what I did is I tried to use epoxy, but I didn't have the right kind of paintbrush to use to spread the epoxy. It kind of chewed through the brush head, so I couldn't spread it very well. So on the chest and abdomen pieces, I ended up using craft glue. And unfortunately, while the craft glue was drying, the chest pieces actually flattened back out, so I would definitely recommend going with epoxy all the way for all your pieces. And after you've done one coat and let it dry sufficiently, I would take some sandpaper, maybe 220 grit or so, and sand it off real nice and smooth, and then do a second coat, just to make sure it's nice and rigid for whenever you go to paint. Next is priming it. You're going to want to put a nice even coat on across all surfaces. You're going to let it dry, and you're going to sand it off, and then repeat priming and sanding again. And then finally, you're ready for your paint, which I just used regular old spray paint. So what I did is sprayed it, and I let it dry. And something I didn't do is that I didn't seal in the paint. And the reason I didn't do that is because I kind of wanted to let the paint fall off on its own a little naturally, just to kind of get some natural weather going to it. So now that I've got all the how-to steps out of the way, let's go ahead and see how my armor turned out and see what color scheme I chose. So here it is. I bet you probably could have guessed what color scheme I was going for right when the video started. I think it turned out great. Obviously you could tell the chest pieces flattened out a little bit and the abdomen piece really flattened out. It was a lot more curved whenever I was working on it, so that's something I'm going to have to work on. You can really tell the epoxy helped hold the shoulder pieces' curvature. And so that's why I think if you were going to do this at home, you should probably get a more robust paintbrush and use epoxy on all pieces. I went with the red color, firstly because it's my favorite color, and second because in the Mandalorian culture, whenever someone paints their armor red, it means that they have a strong sense of family. And being a father figure, family is the most important thing to me, so that's kind of just the theme I was going with my armor. So this is the first step of getting into it. Obviously something I didn't cover was like the decals, like the Mythosaur logo or the Journeyman's Protectors logo on the chest, or any of the other pieces like the collar piece or the backpack or the wrist braces. And those are all going to be coming up soon. I do plan on doing videos for that. And I also plan on doing a video where I remake this helmet here. Sorry, Boba. I've been letting my kids play with this one, and as you can tell, it needs a little bit of help staying together these days. So that's part 1 of this series. Please let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you liked it, make sure to like it. Any suggestions would be greatly appreciated. If you're not already, make sure you get subscribed. You can also follow me on Twitter and TILVids, which is an alternative to this YouTube platform we're on. In the next part of this series, I'm probably going to do the collar and the back piece, and I'm also going to talk about painting on weathering and doing decals like the Mythosaur logo and the Journeyman's Protectors logo. I've been Jacob, and thank you for watching.